Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the breakouts and learned a lot about the tools that are available to get started creating web stories. Now that we've brought the whole group back together, it's time to answer some questions that you all have been dropping in the Q&A section of this event. Now, joining us for this session, we once again have Shishir and Pratik, as well as a new face, Vamsee Josti, a product manager on the Web Stories team at Google. Let's jump right into questions. So for our first question, we have, what's the best way to add video on the back end of a website? Video takes up a lot of space and slow down the speed of the story. What do you recommend?
I'd say, unfortunately, video hosting is definitely going to be problematic. I think what was helpful is that there's two aspects of video storage. There is of videos, there's storage, and then there's bandwidth. What's great is that the bandwidth piece is solved for by Google to some extent, where if your story gets served in Google Search or in Google Discover, the video gets served by the AMP cache, and then that minimizes your bandwidth costs. And I know there's work ongoing to make this more broadly accessible and to have it served from cache across more surfaces. On the storage piece, unfortunately, that is a limitation. And what we suggest is optimizing videos as much as possible before you upload them, and also using other techniques. Like, for example, WordPress has this concept of offloading, or you could use a third-party service to actually upload your videos and then serve from there. I will say that, and Paul was just in our breakout session. Paul Bockus, who's one of our developer advocates, does this really great series around stories and building stories. And his next two episodes are actually focused on how to optimize and really get video content into your page, into your stories. So I definitely recommend checking that out when it does come out.
Sure. I'll also take this up. So one way that we do this is we automatically convert all the videos that you upload into the MakeStories dashboard into bitrate streaming, which is called the HSLA. So that makes sure that irrespective of what kind of network your user uses, if they use a slow 3G, the videos will be rendered into 240 pixels, 240p resolution. So that's one way we approach this. So you can upload a 720p video, and we compress them by default. So the user really does not need to do that. The MakeStories infrastructure takes care of that. And apart from that, the new feature that we have, it really helps you understand that how heavy your story is. So we have something called as Veyometer, where the more videos you upload, it starts to go on, and that if certain videos of yours are not optimized, you can just hit a button inside the MakeStories dashboard, and it will optimize the video for you. So that's how we are taking care of the videos and all those things.
Cool, thanks both of you for answering the question. Now we can hop to another question, which is a two-parter. So one of Web Stories' main goal is to add a more modern format to a traditional blog post or traditional website. When that happens, this person is saying that when they create a web story, it's often a small summary of a blog post. So what is the main objective of a web story? Is it to get users to click and read your full post? Or I guess maybe you can just talk about, like, generally what are some of the use cases for stories? And I'll open that one up to the group.
Yeah, maybe I'll take that one. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Vamsee, as previously mentioned. So at a high level, I'm not sure about the question, the premise of the question. We don't view web stories as a way or trailers to your actual content. Just backing up a second, primarily we're in this product because we feel like, Gen Z, especially the younger generation, tends to want to have access to more visual content. The average attention span of somebody in Gen Z is like roughly 8 seconds. And it doesn't mean that blog posts and traditional web articles aren't great. They are great for more detailed information, but we need to also appeal to sort of the younger audience. So really, we set out to build web stories so that they appeal to a different audience and in a holistic way. So they're not meant to be these trailers that you click off to another place. They're meant to be standalone documents that provide a narrative and a full definition of what you're trying to convey. I hope that answers your question. Mainly, if there's one thing I want you to take away, it's the fact that please don't create web stories just because you want to be able to drive traffic to another existing article. I know that's tempting, but it really needs to stand alone on its own.
Awesome. Thanks, Vamsee. And I actually have another question that I think you can answer. Do web stories created in the finance category or finance vertical get featured in Discover? I mostly see media and entertainment web stories in my Google app.
No, that's a good question. I don't think there's any restriction around finance or anything like that. I mean, at the end of the day, the web is open, and it has all sorts of content, and all sorts of different kind of people with different interests come to Discover or the Google app, and we'd like to surface web stories of a diverse range of topics. So no, there's no sort of limitation around arts and entertainment for that matter.
Awesome, thank you. And now we have a question that's maybe more specific to the editors. Do closed captions need to be created prior to uploading a video, or should they be done within the tools themselves? And Shishir or Pratik, I think. Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead, Pratik.
Yeah. So definitely, yes, you need to create the closed caption files. So you can have a VTT file. We normally suggest our users to use a website called the VTT Creator. So you can just create a VTT file, and then the website's name is vtt-creator.com. You just upload a video, and then you can just enter the subtitles, and it will create a VTT file for you, which you can just upload into the MakeStories editor. So that's one way to do. But yes, you need to create a VTT file. At this point of time, MakeStories does not have a way to create the VTT file for you.
Yeah, the same is the case with the WordPress plugin as well. You need to create a file upfront and then upload it into the video. I think one other thing we discussed in our session was make sure not to burn text if possible into the videos, and add a caption file in, because that definitely impacts like accessibility and other features. So
awesome, thank you. We've got another question that I think, Vamsee, this one might be best for you. If web stories are currently only visible in Discover in the US, India, and Brazil, is it worth making stories if your current audience is currently outside of these regions? Do they surface elsewhere on Google?
Yeah, great question. We're early in this journey, and one of the reasons we focused on US, India, and Brazil is because we want to constrain the problem in some way. But we're always looking to areas to expand and locales to expand to. So we're continuing to look at where we can do that in Discover. Keeping that aside, a lot of the focus this year is actually trying to surface more web stories on search. There's a lot of different efforts going on, and I'm very excited to start to share some of those features as we go through the year, but almost all of those features are going to be global in nature. So you should continue to consider that as you think about producing web stories. The other thing I'll also say is try maybe not just producing web stories for Google's sake, and ideally embed them and treat them as first-class citizens on your own sites as you do with traditional articles. That generally is just good advice, regardless of which locale and whatever else that is under consideration. Hopefully that helps.
Awesome, thank you. And now I think we are coming up on time, so maybe let's see if we can sneak in 2 questions in the last minute or 2. So here we have a question that says, it makes sense that original visuals are preferred, but I'm often working with photo and videos contributed from sources. In other scenarios, we credit these materials in the caption or with a small text overlay. Is it okay to use these contributed materials in web stories with credit to the original sources?
I'll be brief. Yes, the things you do on your regular articles, you should be able to do in web stories too. So there's nothing different in that.
Cool. And then let's see, we probably can get one more in. So here's a question about URLs. So a web page and a web story that are created might end up having similar URLs in titles, not exactly the same, as they talk about the same content. Is this an issue when it comes to SEO, as in the duplicate content messing up the SEO of a story?
I am not an SEO expert. What I do recommend is having stories be standalone documents, and anybody that views the story in its own like independent nature should be able to get all of the information from the story. Regarding duplication, we recommend not doing that. And as much as possible, stories are great for just adding a different perspective or lens to kind of the content that's been written in the article form. Traditionally, a really great example I've seen is somebody talking about a recipe in their blog post in article form, but then creating a story that's sort of like the either about like the ingredient that goes along with not just an ingredient, but like a side item that goes along with the main recipe, or even like a backstory about how you ended up creating that particular recipe. So as much as possible, I'd recommend they not be about the same piece of confirmation content, but we do know there's going to be some overlap in sharing and assets, etc., and that's fine.
Awesome. Thanks, Vamsee. And thank you, everybody, for joining this Q&A session. Thank you, Shishir. Thank you, Vamsee. Thank you, Pratik. Unfortunately, we did run out of time, but don't worry. If we didn't get to your question, we will follow up over email in the following days after the event. You can also tweet at us at Web Creators, and we're happy to answer your questions there as it relates to any of these tools, or just more generally web stories and how they appear on Google.